Chapter 3 Highs and Lows November 1978 Water splashes when Regulus's boot kicks the ground. The Hogwarts Quidditch Stadium is full. Roaring crowds clad in green and silver and red and gold chant for their teams despite the merciless rain. Regulus's broom is in the air before the droplets kicked up by his boots have fallen back to the earth. It cuts through the sheets of water falling from the sky, his chest flat against the wood. It's just his luck that is pouring again. Unsurprising, but irritating. First game of the year, his match as captain, a Gryffindor versus Slytherin game, and the Scottish weather couldn't give them a break. The commentator's voice boomed across the stadium, loud enough to be heard over the howling winds and splattering rain. Regulus blinks water from his eyes and meets the determined gazes of each of his teammates. So long as there's no lightning, they'll be fine. He made sure to train them in worse conditions than today's heavy rain. His teammates return his look with solemn nods. They're ready. They know what they have to do. In the middle of the pitch, Madame Hooch blows her whistle. The match is about to start. This is it. Regulus angles his broom to meet Gryffindor's captain for the mandatory handshake. For a moment, the Gryffindor captain's face is more familiar, that competitive smile at its fullest capacity. Think you can beat us, Reg? He would have taunted. Because last year, this would have been James holding out his hand. A small thrill runs through Regulus, and he has to actively stop himself from glancing towards the stands. He knows his brother and James are watching. Absurdly Serious brought a nonsensical banner that reads, "Go Gryffindor! Go Reggie!" It's absolutely ridiculous, but kudos to Sirius for making him laugh. "Ready, boys?" Madame Hooch asks solemnly, hovering over her broom between them. Her whistle presses against her bottom lip, waiting. Regulus nods once. The Gryffindor captain follows suit. Madame Hooch's whistle pierces the air. The cuffle is released, and they are off in a flurry of windswept cloaks. Game on! Regulus flies up straight away, but not as high as he normally would. Visibility is poor, and Gryffindor is their most formidable opponent. Most of their players trained under James for a few years, and even though he's not here anymore, his legacy is powerful. It shows in the speed and agility of every Gryffindor player, right down to their keeper. Slytherin's best bet is for Regulus to catch the snitch, and fast. There's no sign of the golden ball for now, so Regulus tracks the movements of his team. They are in good form, but their waterlogged gear is slowing them down. It's a handicap on both sides, though, so it's not giving Gryffindor any real advantage. Regulus's main concern is that it will tire them out quicker. At that point, it will be a test of stamina rather than skill. A bludger zooms towards him. Regulus dodges easily, but doesn't miss the chance to do it with a flourish. Showing off a little never hurts anybody. Besides, he doesn't know when a League Scouts will be in the stands. Seeker spends too much time waiting and watching. He needs to use these extra moments however he can. He circles the pitch, flying fast and keeping close to the action so he can shout instruction to his team. They score twice in a row, and Regulus lifts a celebratory fist. You can't keep up morale unless you emote a little, James has told him over the summer when Regulus said he's not one for howling. It was one of many tips, and if the shared triumph on his teammate's face is any indication, it was a good one. Another bludger flies furiously towards him, and Regulus dives to avoid it, right into the path of Gryffindor chaser. Shit. Heart in his throat, Regulus pulls up harshly, tides burning from the fierce hold he has on his broom to maneuver out of the way. Around him, the crowd gasps, then cheers when he avoids the collision. Rainwater gets in his mouth. He's breathing shallow. Fear dissolves down the back of his neck when the danger passes. Her near accident cost them. Gryffindor manages to score a goal. Regulus shouts at his team to keep their eyes on the game, to stay focused. It works, and soon after Slytherin scores again. They are in the lead, but only by 20 points. As Regulus expected, it's a tough match. Gryffindor has a better possession rate, but Slytherin has a better keeper. It's the only reason they are not being pummeled. That, and their two beaters, Dolohov and Cuvant, who are on fire, keeping most of the bludgers aimed at the red and golden team. Clearly, the extra session Jackie had with Dolohov was put to good use. "Less range!" Regulus shouts at one of his chasers. "You are listing to the right and it's making you miss your scoring attempts. That's no way to fly on my team. Balance your fucking weight." "Got it," Rabastan shouts back, readjusting his body on his broom, and he flies away in formation. It looks a bit better, but he's still not perfectly centered. Kissing his teeth, Regulus shakes his head. Not everyone can be as good as James. Flying doesn't come naturally to most people. Still, that was a basic mistake to Rabastan to make. Regulus is going to a glimmer in his peripheral vision. Careful not to draw any attention to himself, Regulus glances out of the corner of his right eye, the grey one. The snitch is on the other side of the pitch, slightly higher up than he is right now. To get it, he's going to have to fly straight through the game. A small smirk tucks in at the corner of his lips. If there's a scout in the audience, they are about to get a lesson in agility and finesse. Regulus flattens himself on his broom and speeds straight and true as an arrow. He cuts through the rain, the droplets tapping at his face from the sheer speed he's reaching. His heartbeat slows. His pulse thrums in his ears. The world falls away. There's only him and the line connecting him to the snitch. It winds around the other players, showing Regulus how and where to avoid them without wasting any space. James asked him once how he did this. For all his prowess, James can't do what Regulus does. He can't take turns as narrow as Regulus's, who is an expert at skimming corners, at getting so close to other players his cloak touches them as he passes. James can't bend the rules of flying to draw curves live instead of sharp angles. He's too bulky, too heavy. It's that simple, Regulus has told him. What James has in strength, he has in speed. "It's beautiful to watch," James had said, making Regulus blush with mild discomfort. He never really learned how to take compliments, nor had anyone ever called his flying techniques beautiful. It's graceful, like a dancer, I guess. And dance he does, up and down, right and left. He swings and bends, skirts around other players, avoids the rogue balls as he flies across the pitch. He's a whirlwind of green and silver, unstoppable. Almost as if they do it of their own accord, Regulus watches his finger close around the little golden ball. The moment it's against his palm, he comes back to himself. It's just in time to hear the siren go off and the stands roar in victory. He did it. They did it. Slytherin won their first game of the year. He's smiling even as raindrops still hit his face and water drips into his mouth. His gear is heavy, but his heart is a weightless, wild thing ricocheting again against his ribs. This is triumph. I did it. Later, he will blame it on the high of the win, on the rush of the endorphins and the overwhelming giddiness of the snitch clutched in his hand. That's why he forgets himself and looks. Not not at Sirius, who jumps up and down, waving his nonsensical sign in the air as he clings to his best friend's arm. Not at Effie and Monty, who stands beside Sirius, clapping like proud parents. No. Regulus looks straight at him, at James. Just James. Only James. Before his team swarms him, they make eye contact. It's a brief second, barely more than an intake of breath, but it's enough. James is smiling from ear to ear. He doesn't jump like Sirius or clap like his parents, but he doesn't have to. He lifts his chin. A quiet congratulations. It's a good thing Regulus is knocked sideways by Dolohov, or he might have done something insane. That was incredible. Sirius hugs him so fiercely, Regulus's feet lift right off the ground. Ah, he complains. He's wet, and the way his clothes stick to him is unpleasant. Sirius, put me down right now. So grumpy, so spiky, like a porcupine, he says, grinning. He does, however, put Regulus down. Can't believe you beat Gryffindor. I feel like a traitor, congratulating you. Don't be absurd, Regulus rolls his eyes, shakes his head. His wet hair is plastered to his skull, so the effect of his curls bouncing to add drama to his annoyance is lost. He pushes some of it back and away from his forehead. When his gaze shifts, he finds hazel eyes watching him with an amusement expression. Hi, James. When you said Cuvette was a great find to replace your beater, I didn't expect her to be that good, James says, sounding impressed. It makes Regulus wants to show off a bit more. I found her. I taught her how to be a part of a team. I knew she had it in her. Do you think I've got what it takes? Instead, he simply smiles with pride swiveling in his chest. I have a good team. This game was a solid start. Solid start? James is interrupted by Sirius, who's frowning for some reason. He shouts at them with a hand gesticulating wildly in the air. What do you mean you told him about Cuvette? When? How? In my letter, Regulus says, cocking an eyebrow. To, James? How many letters have you received? Sirius asks James, finger poking him into the chest. Just the one. Why? James looks distinctly uncomfortable, and Regulus decides there and then that if Sirius somehow convinces James not to write to him again, he will murder him, brother and all. Except Sirius simply beams and lets his hand fall to the side. Ah, I've got 3, all good. Are you getting competitive over how many letters I write? Regulus asks, incredulous. You are the most ridiculous person I've ever met. Regulus, Effie shouts, catching up to them. Unlike her boys, she has an umbrella enchanted to hover above her, repelling water efficiently. It's to protect her hair, she told Regulus once. Applying a charm directly on oneself doesn't keep the humidity at bay, as well as using an umbrella. That was beautiful to watch. Congratulations. Monty comes right behind her and pulls him into a hug. It's still unbelievable to him that this is his life, that he made it out of the darkness and gets to live in the sun. He has a true family, people who care about him. And isn't that the most wonderful thing? The 5 of them chat for a while, both about the game and Regulus's term. Sirius and James have very little to add. Everything comes in their letters, and they are more curious about the Quidditch strategies than his newt studies. That's for Effie and Monty, who nod solemnly while he laments about the rigorous coursework, the complete lack of empathy from his professors. This, too, is something he will never get used to. His parents didn't want to hear him complain about coursework or his struggles. In their minds, Regulus and his brother were infallible in their genius. There was no struggle, only completion. It's a breath of fresh air to let it all go, and he feels a little lighter when he finishes his small rant about Professor McGonagall's ridiculous transfiguration essays. "We'll see you in 6 weeks," Effie tells him when they say their goodbyes. "I can't wait to have you home for Christmas. It feels so lonely without you boys there." "Write to me again," Sirius shouts. He's still holding his ridiculous sign, though the ink has run down the wet cardboard, the words unintelligible. "And if I found out James got more letters than me, we will have words." "As if," James says, lightly punching Sirius's shoulder. "Bye, Reg." Rolling his eyes for the umpteenth time, Regulus nods and waves goodbye. He watches them walk away, James's arm over Sirius's shoulder, their heads bent together. Something tugs at his chest. "As if," James said. As if there is any reason for Regulus and him to correspond more than occasionally. As if Regulus is interesting enough for James to waste his time on him. As if James ever thinks about him as more than his best friend's brother. He has to swallow the bitter taste in his mouth, and he's not sure what name it has. Later, alone in his room, and stuck deciding between 2 shirts to wear for Slytherin's celebration party, Regulus isn't paying attention when he knocks the jar off the edge of the bed. He would left it lying there earlier, when he'd sat for a moment to catch his breath, and took it from its hiding place. It's a compulsion he can't shake. If he doesn't look at them often, he gets antsy. Regulus had been fiddling with the petals for a while, curious about their absence as of late. It's strange he hasn't coughed any more since that night in October. He isn't complaining, though. If it were up to him, he would rather not produce another petal ever again. But now he's knocked it to the floor, where it rolls under the bed far enough he has to get down on his knees to fetch it. Thankfully, the jar isn't broken, though he isn't surprised. He's charmed it with every protection spell he's ever learned. This need to keep it safe and hidden won't leave him, but it does make him wonder. He hasn't coughed up any more in weeks. Why can't he throw these ones away? "Reg!" Barty calls. He's waving from the door, looking impatient. Evan has already gone downstairs. "Come on, you can't be late to a party they are throwing in your honor." "It's for the team," he replies, but Barty is right. It may be party for the team, to him, but as far as his house is concerned, he caught the snitch that won the game. Their thanks come in bottles of fire whiskey and a party that will go well past midnight. He sets the jar back on his bed, lodging in between his pillow and the headboard so it's not in a plain view. Barty doesn't seem to have it noticed, anyway. Thank Merlin, Regulus's back is to the door. Hurriedly he puts on his shirt, fixes his hair a little, and rolls his shoulders back. "I'm ready. Let's go." Regulus doesn't think about the jar again. Regulus is very, very aware that he's had about 3 shots of fire whiskey too many. He should have stopped drinking an hour ago when Barty passed him the bottle and said, "Big swig, Captain." Or maybe before that, when Jackie sidled up beside him, cinnamon sweet on her breath, and whispered, "I'm so glad we're on the same team, Reg. You are the best player at the Hogwarts, and it shows. Oh, I don't feel so well. Excuse me." She'd stood up abruptly and left without another word. Regulus hasn't seen her since, but he's not too worried. Not about Jackie or wherever Barty and Evan disappeared to, or, well, if he's honest, he's not worried about anything. He's king of the fucking castle where he sits on a dark emerald sofa surrounded by his house, his friends, and his team. The team he built, trained, molded, and damned if he's not proud of it. The fireplace cracks every now and then, adding heat to an already stifling common room. Still, it's comfortable, relaxing. Regulus's muscles feel loose despite the slight post-game ache. His blood is warm, a combination of adrenaline that hasn't worn off and too much fire whiskey. It's dangerous, this feeling. It's too much like I can do anything I want and the world is mine and nothing can stop me. He hasn't felt it in so long. Nothing beats the thrill of a game hard won. His mind drifts, the common room falls away, and he's back on the field, lost in the immediate high after catching the elusive snitch. Its little wings flutter between Regulus's finger where he's got it gripped tight in his fist. It's the second before he's swarmed by his team, when two gazes met, and oh, it felt dangerous then too. Like he could have flown across the grass to take James Potter's face between his hands and kiss him square on the mouth. Ludicrous, that thought, but his defenses are down. There's too much liquor in his blood, Hi, is anyone sitting here? Regulus startles from his reverie to find a boy standing to his left. Their knees almost touch when the boy leans down, so Regulus can hear him over the thrum of music. Regulus doesn't recognize him, which means he's not a 7th year. 6th? Maybe 5th? Regardless, Regulus tells him, no, the seat isn't taken. The boy sits, a little awkward in his movements. Regulus is floating. He sits with his legs spread and one arm over the back of the couch, bottle of fire whiskey in hand. Evan passed it to him minutes, hours? Who knows at this point, ago. Then disappeared to find Barty. Regulus drinks from it and crosses one knee over the other. He retracts his arm so it isn't dropped over the couch behind this boy he doesn't know. It's, nice to meet you, the boy stammers. My name is Jordan. Regulus. I know. Regulus glances sidelong at him. You are not a 7th year, are you? Jordan shakes his head. No, 5th. We don't have any classes together. Suppose we wouldn't. But I want to play Quidditch. I wanted to try out for the team this year, but Mom wouldn't buy me a broom to practice with. So I can only practice during the school year, and I don't think it's enough to join your team. The boy speaks in a rush, and Regulus's brain is struggling to keep pace with him. Definitely too many shots. You're brilliant. I love watching you fly. No one can touch you. Regulus fiddles with the label on the fire whiskey bottle. His stomach somersaults at the praise. It's nice after all. Genuine. Thanks for your support and all, but the whole team works hard. Sure, but you are the captain, our seeker. Everything depends on you. The beaters and chasers have their jobs too. He means to stop there, but because this boy has been complimenting him earnestly, Regulus tilts his head and asks, which position do you want to play? Jordan grins. It lights up his whole face. Seeker. I want to try out next year when you leave. I don't think I'll ever be as good as you, but maybe if you... He trails off, neck red and cheeks slowly pinkening. I'm a little drunk right now, so I think maybe I shouldn't ask you this. But do you want to go to Hogsmeade with me? What? Not to use you for Quidditch help or anything. That would be awfully shallow. I just really admire you. Your flying skills too, and you are really... Regulus isn't listening. His fire whiskey-addled brain is doing something dangerous. Something it shouldn't. How many times did he want to ask James to go to Hogsmeade with him, just him? How many times did his heart soar only to plummet when James would ask, "Hey, Reg, wanna go to Hogsmeade with you?" "Yes, please, I do, I really do. Me and Sirius this weekend?" His defenses are so down. Weeks and months, maybe even years of walls built to keep him from the weight he doesn't want to look at. If he doesn't look at it, it's not there. Except here it bloody is, after too much fire whiskey and days worth of game exhaustion. "Hey, Reg, wanna go to Hogsmeade with me?" "Look, James," Jordan frowns. "I'm sorry?" "Oh, well, shit." "Jordan. I meant Jordan." Regulus wants to flip the bottle of fire whiskey in his hand to back the flat of it against his forehead. "Thank you for the offer, but I'm really swamped with Quidditch and newts right now. I would love to be your friend, but I don't really have the time to be a good friend. Best I can manage is being a loosey one, and only Barty and Evan should have to put up with that. I'm sorry." Jordan blinks at him, clearly startled. "I wasn't, yeah, sure. That's okay. Yeah, I get it. Okay, sorry for bothering you, but congratulations on the win. I'm really proud to be in the same house as you." Regulus watches him shoot to his feet, then clears across the common room to a group of boys. They've been staring, Regulus realizes. They stop once Jordan says something to them. Their faces fall in unison, and so does Jordan's. Regulus feels a little bad. A slip of a tongue can be a damning thing. "Hey, Reg, wanna go to Hogsmeade with me?" Embarrassing. The whole lot of it has him feeling itchy. He leaves the bottle of fire whiskey on a table and stumbles through the common room. People stop him with hands on his shoulders, a pat on the back. "Good job, mate." 15 minutes ago, it would have meant the world to him. But the high is fading, reality crashing back in, and all he knows on a loop is as if. There's no one in the bathroom. He shuts the door behind him and locks it, holds the sink in a white-knuckle grip and takes a deep breath. He's dizzy. Merlin, he drank too much. He doesn't want Jordan to think His what? James. Oh, what an asshole thing to do, mixing up someone's name like that. It clearly hurt Jordan, or at the very least startled him. Regulus wants to apologize, but that will only make it worse. He isn't good with words most of the time, and he'd rather not put his foot in his mouth. Though it would seem he's not good at actions either. He's not good at anything, unless it's Quidditch and what's written within a textbook. "For fuck's sake," he mutters, squeezing his eyes shut. As if. That tickle in his throat again. Familiar not because it's welcomed, but because he knows what it means. No. He thought this had stopped, but he feels unsteady on his feet. The floor tilts, the bathroom sways, and for a moment he thinks he's going to throw up. It's all he can do not to crumple on the floor, but the tickle won't leave. He's overwhelmed with the need to get rid of it. He coughs once, and there's nothing. Oh, well, maybe it's just... He coughs again, this time without trying. His body just does it, as though it needs to expel whatever has started clawing at his throat. There it is, fluttering into the basin. It settles, white as fresh snow, velvet snow to the touch. Another petal. He thinks it's done. Usually, it is. One is enough. Except the tickle is back. He's still dizzy, and he coughs. More violent this time. A full body shudder. Something from deep in his lungs, and now there are two fluttering, landing beside the first. 3 in the basin, white against the dark gray of Slytherin's decor. What the... He coughs once more, this time with less violence but still something, and a fourth petal lands beside the first three. 4 petals, all in a clump, coughed up and staring at him. "What is happening to me?" he whispers, reaching for them. He's not dizzy anymore. He feels sober even. His blood runs cold and his muscles feel tight. The petals are soft against his hand. "Where are you coming from? And why?" When the petals were still fresh on his mind, he thought it was nerves that brought them on. The first petal came when Sirius moved away. Of course he was anxious then. They've never lived apart, not truly. Then there was the Hogwarts Express, nerves at the thought of tackling a year alone when he's never had to. Not to mention Newt's Quidditch captain, head boy. Was it so unreasonable for him to panic a little, considering all that's changed in his life? Sure, other petals came after dreams, but not ones he can remember. He must have been anxious in those too. Nightmares, perhaps. Memories of his childhood, he thought. But now? Regulus takes the petals and stumbles out of the bathroom with them clutched in his hand. He's careful not to crush a single one. He can't damage them because they are him. That much he's realizing. Wherever they are coming from, it's him, without doubt. This is not the comforting realization he'd hoped it would be. His room is empty. Evan and Barty must have been somewhere else in the castle in one of their many secret places. Regulus could check the map to find them, but he reaches for the jar instead. When he sits cross-legged on the floor and, with shaking hands, opens it. Now he's nervous, terrified even. There are so many petals. He hadn't realized. Regulus drops the new ones beside the old and brings the jar close to his face. "What are you?" The petals doesn't answer. They sit at the bottom of the jar collecting, identical things in size and shape and color. There are enough now that if he arranged them just right, they would make a whole flower. So that's what he does. He pours them out on the floor and arranges them. They are not the shape of them is funny. He tries several times before the petals more or less sit together, and it still looks like Regulus is missing something that should be obvious. Perhaps it's a multi-layered flower, but really he has no idea. He's never seen something like this before. Still, it's a full flower and some change. He's got enough petal to make almost half of another. Flowers. He's not just coughing up petals, but flowers. Pieces of them, anyway. Regulus stares, memorizes the shape, the size, the exact shade of white. Is that a speck of purple on one petal? He rubs his eyes. They are burning. Tonight he's too tired. There's an ache in his bones and tension in his shoulders, though he isn't sure anymore that it's from the game. He doesn't feel unstoppable. He feels lost, terrified and alone because the first petal is from August and now it's November, and much as he'd hoped, it's not stopping. He places the petal in the jar and shoves it back between his pillow and the headboard. Then he sits under the canopy, grabs his journal from his nightstand, closes the curtain and casts a quiet lumos, and writes until his hand cramps. Until he's filled pages and pages and pages with as if and why and what does it all mean.